G'day you mob, how's it going? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English. I'm your host Pete, and this is the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. So I've had a message from a few of you guys over the past month or two asking me what TV shows and movies I am currently watching. And I was sort of debating, I'm like, do I talk about this much on the podcast? Do I bother? Because I'm not watching a lot of Australian TV at the moment, presently. Sometimes I go through phases where I do, and then other times I end up watching all sorts of random stuff. At the moment, I am in a random stuff phase, so I am in a period of time where I am watching a lot of random things, but I thought I would share it with you guys nonetheless. And I would love to hear from you guys. What are you watching? You know, have you found any really good TV shows, whether they are Australian, American, European, Asian, South American, you know, whether they're from all over the world? Do you have any good recommendations if you've become really fascinated with something or addicted to something, a certain show or film or series or whatever? Send me a message and let me know, because I am a bit of an addict at times too. I can get sucked in to certain shows and binge watch them and everything like that. So I guess firstly, I should probably talk about my recent addiction to archaeology. So I've been watching lots and lots of archaeological series and TV shows and documentaries, particularly on YouTube. These tend to pop up on YouTube for me at the moment. There's a whole bunch of these large YouTube channels that publish not out of date, but like older TV shows and documentaries and series and stuff that were released, you know, maybe 5, 10, 20 years ago about archaeology and history and all that sort of stuff. And I find this stuff endlessly fascinating. I love hearing about people going out into a certain landscape, usually in Asia or Europe somewhere, where there's been people living for, you know, thousands of years, and they are trying to learn more about our ancestors or their ancestors, depending where they are in the world. They dig up certain areas and they find things like, you know, graves with people in there and the grave goods that they've been buried with, you know, weapons or jewelry or clothing, you know, or food, that sort of stuff. And so I've been watching two shows. One in particular I absolutely love. Time Team is what it's called. Time Team. This is based in Britain, so in the UK, and dates back to 1994. So yeah, what is that? It's 31 years old. And initially the series was presented by the actor Tony Robinson, who is famous for, I think he was in Blackadder. That might have been one of the first shows. With what's his name, Rowan Atkinson, who plays Mr. Bean. But that was one of their first kind of comedy sketch shows, and I think he got big. Tony Robinson got big in that. But then he actually ended up doing this presenting job as a presenter on British TV for Time Team, and that became his big thing. That's the thing he became known for, archaeology. So the synopsis for this show is this British series dates back to 1994, but it goes back even further, millions of years in some cases, as a team of specialists dig deep to uncover as much as they can in 3 days about a UK site's archaeology and history. Actor Tony Robinson is the show's host, or presenter, as they say in Britain, and unofficial translator, explaining to viewers in layman's terms, so that's terms that the average person would understand, the average layman, what the experts come across during the dig. So it's a very wholesome TV show, and I actually binge watched the entire, I think there's like 17 series. They must have done it for about 20 years, might be even more than that. And I watched every single episode of every single series and just loved it. And I think a big part of it is, one, there's obviously the archaeology that's taking place, which is inherently fascinating to someone like me. You learn about the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Stone Age, the Neolithic Age, that period, the Roman period in Great Britain, and then after that you would have the Viking period, the Anglo-Saxons, the Jutes, and then I guess the sort of Normans that came in as well. There's all these really interesting periods that happen throughout British history with different peoples conquering the place and moving in and doing stuff. So they always find really cool stuff. That's a big part of it. But the other part is that the characters on the show are just such interesting and fun people. There's just a whole bunch of them, which, you know, when you're watching the show, it's like you're hanging out with friends because of the way they interact and they talk to one another, and you can see that the passion they have for archaeology and doing these digs and spreading scientific knowledge and archaeological knowledge to the world is so at the forefront. That's what they do. They live and breathe this thing. And so it's just so entertaining to watch. And yeah, as someone who isn't a professional archaeologist, you watch someone like Tony Robinson, who presents the show, and he is quite often the person they're asking what the experts probably consider dumb questions. Well, what does that mean? What is this from? Why is that important? And so it helps us as the viewer kind of understand what's going on and keep track of it. So it's an absolutely brilliant show. I recommend you guys check it out if you are into learning about British history, but like in particular the stuff about like the Vikings, the Romans, and the Bronze Age and Stone Age. I always find those periods so fascinating in Britain, but also, just Europe more largely. So then there's Digging for Britain, which is kind of, I guess it's like a series that has followed on from Time Team, where the host, Dr. Alice Roberts, this drop-dead gorgeous British presenter and archaeologist, I think she's an osteologist, like an expert in bones, she sort of goes around and sees all of the different archaeology work that has been done in a certain year and presents that to you. So I think what's happened is there's all these experts that are doing archaeological work at any time in Great Britain. They're working for universities and museums and getting funding from the government to do it when a building's going to be built somewhere and they need to do the archaeological work before that building is built. They often have cameras with them and they'll film the interesting stuff that happens on site. So, they'll give the professor a video camera or whatever and just say, when you're out doing this work, make sure that you film any of the interesting stuff that comes up so that we can share these moments with you. And then at the end of the year, I think Dr. Alice Roberts puts together the footage from these sites where they've done this work, and then often has the people running those sites come in and present certain objects that they've found. It might be I think there was like the tip of a spear from the Stone Age that they found in it would have been like a bog or something at the bottom of a lake that had been left there with a dead deer, all sorts of interesting stuff like that, so that you can almost touch history. You can see it, you can feel it. She picks it up, she'll show you it, you can see it under a microscope, you can almost smell it, feel it, taste it, and get an idea of, wow, these people in the past were doing these things. So that as well is a really cool show. And she goes around Britain in different regions. She might do Scotland one week, and then the next one is in the West Coast, in Wales or something, and then she's off somewhere else. And it's always different time periods. So it might be something from World War II, there might be something from the Viking era, it might be something from the Stone Age, and then the Roman period. So it's just so fascinating. I don't know if I'm a bit of a nerd. You guys are probably listening thinking, man, this is boring as, or maybe you love it. But yeah, I find this stuff so fascinating. So that one's called Digging for Britain. And the other one is Time Team. So I've been watching those two. That's kind of been me nerding out, getting a bit nerdy, learning about science and archaeology, a field that I was always fascinated by, but never studied at university when I was doing my science degree. So yeah, it's fun watching all these. So now we get into the more, what would you say, like recreational type TV shows, the stuff that you sit back and, have a beer or a drink or some chips or something and watch. I recently binge watched the 7th season of Black Mirror. I don't know if you guys have seen that. This is on Netflix. And Black Mirror, how to explain this? I think every single episode is created by a different producer and has different actors and everything in it. And they're often set in the present or in the near future, where there's sort of like aspects of technology that are kind of being commented on or like presented. You might have an AI chip in that everyone gets in their brain, and that's one episode of kind of like, what does this mean? What do people do with it? It's often dystopian, right? So the excerpt is, in an obtrusively dystopian future, several individuals grapple with the manipulative effects of cutting-edge technology in their personal lives and behaviors. So there you go. It's, I think, probably about 5 different episodes, and each one of them tackles different types of cutting-edge technology in the personal lives and behaviors of the actors and actresses. So I wonder if I can open it up here and try and give you an idea of what some of the episodes were like. If I find it, just give me a tick. I've got Netflix open in front of me, funnily enough. Okay, so where's season 7 here? Let me have a look at the episodes. So what do we have? Lock Henry, that's season 6. Sorry, guys. Trying to do this all in one go. All right, maybe this is a fail. Anyway, one of the interesting ones was like
it's a sort of
this woman had a brain tumor and she ends up, in a coma and going to the hospital. And this woman from a company comes and says, hey, we have this product where we can remove the brain tumor and effectively put a computer in her head where that brain tumor was, and it will function. It'll allow her to function, but you also have to pay to be on a subscription model, and it's $300 a month. And throughout this episode, he saves his wife's life, and she gets this, implant that saves her life. But then she starts doing things like saying ads randomly, and they'll go and see the company that's put this chip in and be like, why is she suddenly talking about shampoos or whatever in conversations and she doesn't even know about it? And they'll be like, oh, well, you have to upgrade now to the Premium Plus membership, and it's actually $800 a month. So it's very dystopian in that sort of sense. That's just one episode, and the rest are always completely different. But I remember watching that, and it's one of these interesting series where sometimes the episodes will have like a kind of happy ending that resolves itself nicely, and you kind of like feel good for the characters. And then other times it is very much the opposite, where you're almost left there with an icky feeling of just like, oh my gosh, that was awful. Like it's interesting. It's like a train wreck type thing where you're watching it and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't stop watching. But at the same time, when it doesn't end well, you're kind of left there thinking, ugh, this is sort of uncomfortable. It's interesting to think about, but it's like, damn, I was hoping for the happy ending. Maybe we're sort of brainwashed a bit by most TV shows and movies to always assume there's going to be a happy ending coming. But it's part of the reason I like Black Mirror. It kind of subverts your expectations. A lot of the time, you'll watch it expecting there's going to be a happy ending or expecting something, and then something completely different happens, and you're left kind of like, whoa, that was weird. I watched a documentary called Gabby Petito. So Gabby Petito, this was a very sad story several years ago. I can't remember exactly when. It would have been in the 2020s, so I think it was just after COVID. But it was this young girl suddenly went missing, and I think she wasn't found initially, and her boyfriend just took the van. They were traveling around the US in a van. The boyfriend took that van back to his place, and when people went, they knew he got back, but they didn't know where she was. They went to his house and were like, what's the deal? And the parents were like, we got a lawyer, don't talk to us. And so it's sort of like, okay, nothing sus. Like, that sounds a bit dodgy. And so the documentary is effectively unraveling what happened in her tragic murder, right? It's not a spoiler. They found her body I think like a week or two after the guy got back. And that was the whole controversy of like, what happened to her? How did she die? And there wasn't a lot of evidence to prove anything one way or the other, right? So this documentary sort of goes through that whole process and interviews family members and friends and everything like that around this story and sheds a lot more light on it. And it was a weird story at the time because there were so many people all over the world on the internet searching for details because everything is now filmed. People are, traveling around the US in vans, filming their hikes and their camping and all that sort of stuff. There was so much going on with people online being like sleuths, investigating all over the place and trying to piece together where she had last been seen, where the van was at a certain time, where her body was found, like all this sort of stuff. And it was a very interesting moment for a few weeks there where it was in the news everywhere. So that was a good documentary. And it gave me a bit more closure on that story because I remembered when it had sort of come out. And just, you're left there wondering like, what the hell happened? Especially too, because both people, the Gabby and her partner, they both seem on the outside like such normal human beings. And so it just doesn't look sus. But then as you dig deeper, obviously you start finding it starts to unravel and, it gets pretty kind of lurid and interesting. The next series, like I've been watching a whole bunch, but I find it hard to remember them quite often. Tokyo Vice was a really, really cool series that I watched recently. I think there's 2 seasons, and I was put onto this by one of my students in private lessons who's Japanese, and she was like, if you want to learn more about the media, the police, and the Yakuza in Japan from like the 90s and what it was like, check out this series. It's really good. And it's kind of like 50% in English, 50% in Japanese. And I think they've done that intentionally so that it targets both Japanese and Western audiences who understand English. Because, you know, if it was in 100% Japanese, probably many fewer Westerners would watch it. And if it was in 100% English, many fewer Japanese people would watch it. But I thought it was pretty tastefully done. So the synopsis is Jake Adelstein, an American journalist, plugs into the Tokyo Vice Police squad and descends into the neon underbelly of Tokyo. And I guess neon would kind of be the idea of the neon lights, you know, like the brothels and the bars and all that sort of stuff. The underbelly of a city or a place is usually the dark side of it where all the illegal stuff happens. You know, the prostitution, the drug dealing, the gangsters, the crime, all that sort of stuff. So the neon underbelly of Tokyo. And it was a really, really compelling season. They kind of show you these call girls, prostitutes, entertaining girls who entertain pretty much everyone, like from the Yakuza to the police to everyday people. You've got the journalists from a Tokyo newspaper, and Jake Adelstein gets a job at that newspaper. You've got the policemen, both corrupt and sort of like straight shooting, honest policemen. And you have all this kind of like crime behind the scenes, these sort of like faceless men at the top of the Yakuza and the government and everything doing dodgy shit the whole time. And Jake Adelstein is that kind of stereotypical character who just can't let go of a story. He has to keep digging. He has to keep pulling at threads and trying to find out more information about, you know, injustices that are done. And so it was just a really, really fascinating TV show to watch because I find Japanese culture endlessly fascinating, you know, whether it's stuff about their culture more generally, the royal family, the Yakuza, the samurai history, the language, their food. I find Japanese culture just so interesting. So it was really cool watching this series set in the 90s because you kind of learn so many of these things about Japan. It's not just like very myopic and very detailed about one specific topic. It kind of covers things all over the place, like the media culture and how people are so hierarchical in businesses in Japan, and you have people right at the top who you need to sort of bow down to, and you never question what they say, and like there's a whole hierarchy of people all the way down to the lowly journalists that Jake is. And the same thing is kind of structurally seen in the police station as well as the Yakuza, right? They all have their structures and the way that they interact with one another. And yeah, that was a really cool show. The next one, and I'm still in the process of watching this, is The Last of Us. The Last of Us. And this is a kind of, well, I guess, what does it say here? Tasked with escorting a teenager across a post-apocalyptic world, a dreaded smuggler joins hands with a young apprentice to fulfill the mission unscathed. So that would be, I guess, season 1 synopsis. But it was a video game. If you guys played PlayStation, I think it was only out on PlayStation. And it's effectively a zombie game. It's that standard old trope of like, you know, 2 people join together because their lives are in shambles and they hold on to each other in a post-apocalyptic world, and they have to go from one place to another because of something. You know, right? They're trying to save someone, they're trying to achieve something, they're trying to do something, whatever it is. Those stories, you know, they're pretty simplistic, but it's told in a very, very emotive and compelling way in the game and in the TV show to some extent. There's a lot of criticism about the TV show's second season, which is more related to the fact that the second game, the writing was a bit so-so at the time. But I'm actually being pleasantly surprised by the second season so far. I'll try and avoid spoilers. And yeah, I think I just watched the 4th episode, and it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. So I've been enjoying that. And I just tend to love these post-apocalyptic zombie shows. It's always really funny, right? In this one, the zombies are like a fungal thing. I think there's like some kind of fungus that's infected humanity, and only a certain number of people have survived uninfected, and there are some people who are completely immune to the fungus. And so the zombies is like one of these interesting things where they're kind of used as a way of having this external threat at all times when you're outside in these shows, these worlds, these video games. The zombies are like this. You've got to be careful. You've got to be afraid of something. They're the other. They're the bad guys. They're this thing that you can't bargain with that is out there and will kill you if you're not careful. So everyone is always on edge. Everyone always has to be careful. But then the real interesting thing is, I guess, the stories that happen with the different characters and how they survive and interact in such a stressful environment. So that's why I think these zombie TV shows are always so interesting. It's not because, wow, I can't wait to check out the zombies. It's more the zombies are just being used as this kind of like story writing trope to have something that everyone is afraid of and scared of and needs to prepare for. But then it's the way in which people interact. They betray each other, they fall in love, they have to, sacrifice, they have to do all these things because of this external danger. So I've been enjoying that. I don't know what the rest of the season is going to be like. The second season is more of like a revenge sort of story where you have like one character has been like killed by another character, and then a third character is trying to get revenge and find the original perpetrators of that. So again, it's these standard tropes, but it's been fun to watch. And then I've got two more here for you, and these ones are also very interesting. When Evil Lurks. This is an Argentinian film that I think I was just doing a search online at some point trying to find good movies. Like just I type in, like best movies 2023, and then I go on IMDb, that movie website, and rank them by how many reviews they got and how many stars they got. And this one got a whole heap of rave reviews. It got 8 out of 10 on average from thousands and thousands of people. And so I was curious. My curiosity had been piqued. So I checked this movie out, and it was really good. And again, I guess this one's not a zombie one. It's about demons. The excerpt is, when the residents of a small rural town discover that a demon is about to be born among them, they desperately try to escape, but it may be too late. So it is another one of these sorts of things where you have this external threat that is supernatural, and the main characters are trying to escape this thing, get away from it, and they just don't seem to be able to do that, for the progression of the film. So it was really, really good. I actually really enjoyed this. So if you like horror films, then I definitely think you'll enjoy this. If you do not like horror films, I would recommend not watching this one because it is quite gruesome. It is quite gory. There's some gore in it. So yeah, that might be one to avoid if you're not into it. I enjoyed it though. The characters were just well played. The actors were all really, really well acted. They did their jobs really, really well, and it was believable. It was one of those films where you get sucked in and you're kind of in a trance watching it, and that's good film, when you can get sucked in and you're just enjoying what's being presented in front of you, and you're not being snapped out of it every other minute thinking, what, that would never happen. That's what a good film can do usually. And then the last one is a Spanish film called Piggy. And I think I came across this one because there are some of these YouTube channels where small filmmakers can upload their short films. And there was one channel, there's different channels for like romance or comedy or horror or sci-fi or action. And there was one with horror, and I was just watching a bunch of these short films. They might be from 7 to 15 minutes long. And there was one called Piggy, and it was so good and got so much attention, and people enjoyed it so much that it got made into an actual movie. And that was what I watched recently. So the excerpt for this is, Sarah is an overweight teen who witnesses a stranger kidnap a clique of girls who bully her on a regular basis. When police start asking questions, Sarah keeps quiet as she's torn between revealing the truth or protecting the man who saved her. So it is this interesting story of there's these girls who treat her like crap. They tease her for being fat and ugly or whatever, hence the name Piggy, right? They compare her to a pig. And then she sees effectively a serial killer kidnap these girls, and she's stuck between this situation of, do I do anything about this to get the serial killer, or do I just let the serial killer do his work on these girls who've treated me awfully for years? And it follows the progression, right? So yeah, again, I won't give you any spoilers. I would check it out. I'm not sure what you can watch these on. I will have to have a look. But they're probably all over the place. There's a whole bunch of Netflix. Time Team and Digging for Britain should be on YouTube. I think they might be streamed as well, but I tend to watch the episodes on YouTube. Black Mirror and Gabby Petito, they're on Netflix. Tokyo Vice, let's see, stream is on Apple TV. And then we have The Last of Us 2, stream is on Prime Video. And then When Evil Lurks is on Prime, Google Play, and Apple TV. And then Piggy Movie Stream is on Prime, YouTube, Apple TV, and Google Play as well. So, yeah. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you've learnt a lot of different vocab, hearing me talk about all of these different TV shows. I am a bit of a weirdo where I like a lot of different things. So that's why we've gone from horror films to archaeology to Tokyo Vice to Gabby Petito. I just love good TV, I guess. If it's interesting, if it's compelling, if it's fascinating, then I'm really into it. So if you guys have any suggestions, if you've got any TV shows you're currently hooked on, that you're currently binge watching, whether they are Australian or not, please send me a message. Shoot me a message on Instagram, or you can email me at pete@aussieenglish.com.au and let me know what you're watching, and I might be able to check it out. And who knows, if you enjoy this episode, maybe I have to do one more frequently so that you guys can hear what I'm up to and what I'm watching. But anyway, yeah, I'm your host, Pete. This has been an episode of Aussie English. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Tooroo!